The gathering storm, the great crystal dome of Nexus. Station reflected the light of three different suns as it orbited the neutral zone between the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Inside the massive structure, representatives from across the Andorian sector had gathered for an emergency session of the Triple Alliance Council. Admiral Vex Vorthik stood at the center of the circular chamber, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he surveyed the assembled delegates. The Vorthik Empire had ruled the Eastern Spiral Arm for over 8 centuries, and Vex embodied everything that made his people successful. His yellow eyes missed nothing, and his strategic mind had never lost a major campaign. The crimson and gold uniform of the Imperial Navy stretched across his powerful frame, decorated with medals from dozens of conquered worlds. Across from him sat Commander Lyra Zelani, her energy form contained within a sophisticated containment suit that allowed her to interact with physical matter. The Zelani Federation controlled the core worlds, and their mastery of energy manipulation made them feared throughout the galaxy. Lyra's suit glowed with soft blue light that pulsed in rhythm with her thoughts. She had served as the Federation's primary military advisor for 3 decades, and had never encountered a tactical problem she could not solve. The third member of the ruling triumvirate floated in a specialized atmosphere chamber designed for his species. Collective Speaker Zoan Quinn represented the insectoid Quinn Collective, whose hive mind intelligence network spanned thousands of worlds. His compound eyes reflected the chamber's lights as he processed information from countless sources simultaneously. The collective's ability to gather and analyze intelligence was unmatched in the known galaxy. These 3 civilizations had formed the Triple Alliance 200 years ago, after a devastating war that had consumed entire star systems. Since then, they had maintained peace through a careful balance of power and mutual respect. No outside force had ever threatened their combined authority. Until now. Admiral Vex began the session with the formal words that had opened every emergency council meeting for 2 centuries. Fellow representatives of the Triple Alliance, we gather today to address a threat to our established order. He gestured toward the holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. A 3-dimensional map of the Andorian sector appeared, showing the territories controlled by each member of the Alliance. However, there was something different about the map today. In the region that had been marked as dead space for the poor, past 2 centuries, new markers were appearing. Commander Lyra leaned forward in her chair, her energy form brightening with interest. Admiral, these readings cannot be accurate. The Terran sector has been empty since the Great Silence. Zoan Quinn's voice buzzed through his chamber's communication system. The collective surveillance networks confirmed these findings. Unknown. Vessels have been detected in 17 different systems that were previously uninhabited. The Great Silence was one of the most mysterious events in galactic history. 200 years ago, a young species called humans had made contact with several Alliance border colonies. They had seemed primitive, but showed potential for development. Then, without warning, all communication from human space had stopped. Scout ships sent to investigate found empty worlds and no signs of life. The Alliance had assumed the humans had destroyed themselves in some planetary war or natural disaster. Now, it appeared they had been wrong. Admiral Vex manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on the human sector. Our long-range sensors have detected energy signatures, unlike anything in our databases. The ships appear to be using some form of advanced propulsion that leaves minimal traces. How advanced? Lyra asked, her suit's glow intensifying with concern. Based on preliminary analysis, their technology appears to be at least 50 years ahead of our current capabilities, Zoan replied. The collective has been monitoring electromagnetic emissions from their space. They have developed technologies that we do not understand. A murmur of unease spread through the chamber. The other Alliance members, including the crystalline Nexari and the aquatic Deepstream Republic, had never seen their three most powerful leaders show such concern. Admiral Vex continued his briefing. Intelligence reports suggest the humans have been developing in complete isolation for 2 centuries. During that time, they have established colonies in over 40 star systems and developed a military force of unknown size and capability. What do we know about their intentions? Asked Ambassador Kethril of the Nexari Coalition. Her crystalline form chimed softly as she spoke, creating harmonious tones that translated into words. That is what concerns us most, Zoan answered. The collective has detected no attempts at communication from human space. They appear to be content with their isolation, but their expansion continues at an unprecedented rate. Commander Lyra stood up, her energy form casting dancing shadows on the chamber walls. We cannot allow an unknown force to develop unchecked in our sector. The balance of power that has maintained peace for 2 centuries could be destroyed. Admiral X nodded in agreement. The Empire proposes a joint investigation. We will assemble a combined fleet to make contact with these humans and determine their capabilities and intentions. How large a fleet? Asked General Mortis of the Helian war clans, his scarred face showing the interest of a born warrior. Large. Enough to demonstrate the full power of the Triple Alliance, X replied. 1,000 ships representing all our member civilizations. We will approach their border systems and make formal contact according to established galactic protocols. The proposal sparked immediate debate among the council members. Some argued for caution, suggesting that diplomatic contact should be attempted first. Others, particularly the military representatives, supported a show of overwhelming force. To ensure human compliance with Alliance authority, Commander Lyra raised her hand for silence. Fellow representatives, we must remember our history. Every new species that has encountered the Alliance has ultimately chosen to join our Federation or accept our protection. The humans will be no different. The collective agrees, Zoan added. Our analysis indicates that no single species, regardless of technological advancement, can stand against the combined might of our 3 civilizations. The humans will see reason when faced with our united fleet. After 3 hours of discussion, the vote was unanimous. The Triple Alliance would assemble the largest fleet in galactic history to make contact with the mysterious humans. Admiral Vex would command the operation, with Commander Lyra serving as tactical advisor and collective speaker Zoan, providing intelligence support. As the council session ended and the representatives dispersed to their ships, none of them suspected that their decision would lead to the most shocking military defeat in galactic history. Meanwhile, in the human colony system of New Geneva, Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, studying the latest intelligence reports. From her communications officer, Elena was a 3rd-generation colonist whose grandparents had been among the last humans to leave Earth before the Great Exodus. She had short black hair, dark eyes that reflected her Hispanic ancestry, and the calm confidence that came from 20 years of military service. The Defiant was humanity's newest warship, incorporating technologies that had been developed during 2 centuries of isolated advancement. While the Alliance had spent those years maintaining their established order, humans had been forced to innovate and adapt to survive in the hostile environment of deep space. Asterisk. Captain, called Communications Officer David Shawn from his station. We're receiving reports from our border monitoring stations. A massive fleet has assembled at the edge of Alliance space. Elena turned from the tactical display where she had been reviewing the ship's new weapon systems. How massive, David? David consulted his instruments carefully before answering. Preliminary count suggests over 1,000 vessels, Captain. It's the largest fleet movement we've ever detected. Elena felt a familiar tightness in her chest that always came before battle. For 200 years, Humanity had lived in self-imposed exile, developing technologies and strategies that would allow them to survive without depending on alien civilizations. They had hoped to remain hidden until they were strong enough to reclaim their place in the galaxy. It appeared that time had arrived sooner than expected. "Signal Fleet Command," Elena ordered. "Inform Admiral Harrison that the Alliance has discovered our presence. Request permission to intercept their fleet at the border." Chief Engineer Marcus Webb looked up from his engineering console with concern. "Captain, intelligence reports suggest they outnumber us by at least 10 to 1. Are we really going to engage such a large force?" Elena smiled grimly. "Marcus, the Alliance has spent 2 centuries fighting primitive civilizations with inferior technology. They have no idea what humans have accomplished during our isolation." The Defiant continued its patrol through the outer system, its advanced sensors monitoring the approaching Alliance fleet. Elana's crew went about their duties with practiced efficiency, unaware that they were about to participate in a battle that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. In her private quarters that evening, Elena reviewed the classified files that detailed humanity's technological advancement during the Great Silence. Fusion power had been replaced by quantum reactors that could generate energy by manipulating space-time itself. Traditional projectile weapons had evolved into particle beam systems that could cut through any known material. Most importantly, human ships now utilized dimensional folding technology that allowed them to exist partially outside normal space, making them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The Alliance was about to discover that the primitive humans they remembered no longer existed. 4 minutes to forever. The Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Geneva system in perfect formation. 1,000 ships representing 12 different civilizations spread across space in a display of power that had intimidated countless species throughout galactic history. Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching as his tactical officers coordinated the massive formation. "Status report," he commanded, his scaled hands clasped behind his back in the traditional Vorthic pose of authority. "All ships have successfully completed the jump," reported his tactical officer. "Long-range sensors detect a single human vessel approximately 2 light hours from our position." Admiral Vex studied the tactical display with satisfaction. 1 ship against 1,000 was exactly the kind of overwhelming advantage that made negotiations simple. The humans would see the impossibility of resistance and agree to Alliance terms immediately. "Open a communication channel on all frequencies," he ordered. "Broadcast the standard first contact protocol." The message went out across space in over 300 languages, though the meaning was always the same. The Triple Alliance demanded immediate surrender and compliance with galactic law. Any resistance would result in the complete destruction of human forces. Light hours away, the UES Defiant received the transmission while conducting routine patrols of the system's outer regions. Captain Elena Vasquez listened to the Alliance ultimatum with the calm expression that had earned her the respect of her crew during their previous missions. "David, prepare a response," she ordered. "Transmit on the same frequencies they used." Communications Officer David Chun activated the transmission system. "Channel open, Captain." Elena stood up from her command chair and spoke clearly into the recorder. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. You have entered space claimed by humanity without permission. State your business and withdraw immediately, or you will be considered hostile." She nodded to David, who closed the channel. Around the bridge, her officers continued their preparations with quiet efficiency. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb had all systems running at optimal levels, while Tactical Officer Sarah Mitchell had charged the ship's revolutionary weapons arrays to full power. "Captain," called Navigator James Rodriguez from his station, "the Alliance." Fleet is changing formation. They're moving to surround our position. Elena watched the tactical display as the massive alien fleet maneuvered into attack positions around the Defiant. The sight would have terrified most species, but Elena had been preparing for this moment her entire career. "All hands, battle. Stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is not a drill." On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, Admiral Vex stared at his communications display in disbelief. The human captain had not only refused to surrender, but had actually ordered the Alliance fleet to withdraw from the system. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the human vessel is not responding to our surrender demand. They appear to be taking an aggressive stance." Commander Lyra's voice crackled over the communication system from her ship, the Energy Lance. "Admiral, this is unprecedented. In our entire history, no single ship has ever challenged the full Alliance fleet. The collective recommends immediate demonstration of force," added Zoan Quinn from his vessel, the Hive Mind. "The humans must be made to understand the futility of resistance." Admiral Vex made his decision. "All ships prepare to engage. We will disable their vessel and board it to accept their surrender. Set weapons to minimum power. We want prisoners, not debris." Asterisk, the Alliance fleet began its attack with a coordinated precision that had conquered dozens of star systems. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the lone human ship from hundreds of different directions. The combined firepower was enough to destroy an entire planetary defense fleet. What happened next would be discussed in military academies for centuries to come. The UE's Defiance simply vanished. Admiral Vex blinked in confusion as his sensors lost all trace of the human vessel. "Tactical report." "Where did they go?" "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied, frantically checking his instruments. "The ship has completely disappeared from our sensors. No energy signature, no debris field, nothing." Before anyone could respond, the Defiant reappeared directly in the center of the Alliance formation. The human ship had somehow moved 300,000 kilometers in less than 2 seconds, a feat that should have been impossible with any known technology. Captain Elena Vasquez stood calmly on her bridge as the ship's dimensional folding systems completed their first combat maneuver. The technology allowed the Defiant to exist partially outside normal spacetime, making it effectively invisible to conventional sensors while enabling instantaneous movement across vast distances. "Sarah, you may engage enemy targets," Elena ordered. Tactical Officer Sarah Mitchell had been waiting for this moment. Her hands moved across the weapons controls with practiced precision as she activated the ship's particle disruption arrays. Unlike the energy weapons used by Alliance civilizations, human particle beams operated by destabilizing matter at the quantum level. Asterisk, the results were immediate and devastating. 6 Alliance ships simply ceased to exist as the particle beams touched their hulls. There were no explosions, no debris fields. The vessels were converted to their component atoms in microseconds, leaving only expanding clouds of harmless gas. "Direct hits on all targets," Sarah reported with grim satisfaction. "Enemy vessels have been neutralized." The Alliance fleet erupted in panic as commanders tried to understand what had happened to their ships. Admiral Vex watched his tactical display in horror as more vessels simply vanished from existence whenever the human ship fired. "All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel," he commanded desperately. "Maximum power, all weapons." The Alliance fleet unleashed everything they had at the Defiant. Thousands of energy beams and plasma torpedoes converged on the human ship's position, generating enough heat to melt a small moon. The Defiant folded back into dimensional space, allowing the enemy fire to pass harmlessly through the area where it had been positioned. A moment later, it reappeared behind the Alliance command formation and fired again. "Admiral, Dex felt his flagship shudder as particle beams struck the Eternal Conquest's shields. The protective energy fields that had deflected countless attacks simply dissolved under the quantum disruption effect. Emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship as critical systems began to fail. Damage report. He shouted over the sound of sparking control panels. Sir, our shields are completely down, his engineering officer reported. Main power is failing, and we're losing atmosphere on multiple decks. The battle, if it could be called that, continued for exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. In that time, the U.S. Defiant destroyed or disabled over 800 Alliance vessels, while taking no damage whatsoever. The ship's dimensional folding capability made it impossible to target, while its particle destruction weapons rendered all Alliance defenses useless. Commander Lyra's ship, the Energy Lance, lasted longer than most due to her species' natural affinity for energy manipulation. However, even her advanced shields could not protect against weapons that attacked matter at the quantum level. Her ship's final transmission was a single word: impossible. Collective Speaker Zohan's vessel, the Hive Mind, attempted to ram the human ship when all other weapons failed. The Defiant simply folded into dimensional space, allowing the Alliance vessel to pass through empty vacuum before reappearing and finishing off the rest of the fleet. When the battle ended, only a handful of Alliance ships remained intact, and those were too damaged to pose any threat. Space around New Geneva was filled with expanding clouds of vaporized metal, and the few survivors who had managed to reach escape pods. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on her bridge, surveying the aftermath of the most one-sided battle in galactic history. Her ship had not taken a single hit, and her crew had performed flawlessly under pressure. "David, open a channel to the surviving Alliance vessels," she ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Elena's voice carried across space to the few remaining Alliance ships. "This is Captain Vasquez. Your fleet has been defeated. Withdraw from human space immediately and inform your governments that humanity is reclaiming its place in the galaxy. Any future aggression will be met with appropriate force." Admiral Dex, drifting in an escape pod from his destroyed flagship, listened to the human captain's words with the stunned realization that the balance of galactic power had just shifted forever. The Triple Alliance, which had ruled the Andorian sector for 2 centuries, had been crushed by a single human warship in less than 5 minutes. As the surviving Alliance vessels limped away from New Geneva, Elena turned to her communications. "Officer, David, send a message to Fleet Command. Inform Admiral Harrison that the secret is out. It's time for humanity to return to the galaxy." The response came back within hours. Across human space, the defense fleet began to mobilize. 2 centuries of isolation had ended, and humanity was ready to take its place as the dominant power in the galaxy. In the months that followed, the news of the Alliance defeat spread throughout known space. Species that had been oppressed by the Triple Alliance for generations began to rebel, knowing that the old order had been broken. The Vorthok Empire, Zilani Federation, and Quinn Collective were forced to accept new treaties that recognized human authority over the Andorian sector. Captain Elena Vasquez was promoted to Admiral and given command of humanity's first diplomatic fleet. Her mission was to establish formal relations with the dozens of species that had requested human protection following the Alliance defeat. As she stood on the bridge of her new flagship, the U.S. Unity, Elena reflected on how much had changed since that day at New Geneva. Humanity had spent 2 centuries in exile, using that time to develop technologies and strategies that made them the most powerful force in the galaxy. The great silence was over. Humanity had returned to claim its destiny among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The age of human expansion had begun. Asterisk.